I know this story is about how my abusive parents ruined my life, but before that, let's look at where I am today and how I realized that. I whispered those words to the dark ceiling above my bed while the city outside my apartment window slowly drowned in silence. It was almost 3 in the morning, the night after my 30th birthday, or technically the second night. The celebration had stretched for 2 whole days because apparently my friends refused to let me pretend my birthday was just another day. The apartment still smelled faintly of pizza, alcohol, perfume, and birthday candles. Empty bottles sat abandoned on the kitchen counter beside paper plates and melted ice. Someone had left half a chocolate cake in the fridge with a plastic spoon sticking out of it because nobody could find clean forks anymore. I smiled. A real smile. Not the fake kind I learned to wear growing up. Not the careful smile designed to calm angry parents before they exploded. Not the polite smile made to survive people. A real one. Because for the first time in my life, I looked around and realized something unbelievable. People loved me. Not because they were forced to. Not because they wanted something from me. Not because they were afraid of me leaving. They just loved me. And maybe that sounds small to most people. Maybe normal people grow up already knowing that. Maybe they spend their childhood understanding that love can exist without fear attached to it. I didn't. So sitting there alone after everyone went home felt strange, peaceful, heavy, beautiful. My phone buzzed beside me again. Another message. "Still alive birthday, Grandpa?" From Maya. I laughed quietly. Then another one. "Drink water before sleeping, idiot." From Daniel. And one more. "Proud of you." From Leora. That one hit harder than the others. Proud of you. Such a simple sentence. 4 years ago, I would have cried reading it. Maybe I still wanted to. I closed my eyes and thought about them. The people who somehow found me despite all the damage. Maya was probably the person who understood me the most. Not because our lives were identical, but because our fears were. I met her later in life, long after childhood, long after most of the damage had already settled into our bones. The first time we really talked was after everyone else left a small gathering. She sat quietly on the balcony, staring at the city lights, with this exhausted look on her face like existing itself was too heavy. Eventually, she admitted she came from a house filled with control, screaming, impossible expectations, and anxiety so overwhelming it controlled every movement she made. And I remember staring at her, thinking, "Oh, you too." Not in a comforting way, more like recognizing another survivor after a war nobody else could see. Maya moved through life carefully. Every decision took enormous energy because her mind was trained to expect punishment behind every mistake. Even simple things terrified her sometimes, calling places, setting boundaries, saying no, leaving toxic situations, existing freely. And still she kept moving, slowly, painfully slowly sometimes. Sometimes she took steps backward. Sometimes she stood completely still for months, emotionally. But she kept going. I admired that more than people who succeed easily. Because people like us don't climb mountains naturally. Every step feels like dragging chains tied around your lungs. We became each other's reminders that survival itself was progress. There were nights when she encouraged me to keep going after I mentally collapsed from burnout. And there were nights when I reminded her that fear didn't mean weakness. We understood each other in ways that required no explanation. Then there was Leora. Honestly, if someone told me years ago that we'd become close friends, I would have laughed in their face. We met in university, and at first we barely made sense together. She came from a completely different world than mine, different background, different lifestyle, different personality. She was open in ways I couldn't understand, warm in ways that confused me. Meanwhile, I was still emotionally built like a cornered animal pretending to be a human being. I remember how awkward our early conversations were. She'd ask normal questions and I'd answer like I was being interrogated by police officers. She noticed everything too. Every flinch, every over-apology, every moment I panicked over tiny mistakes. But instead of leaving, she stayed. Slowly, we peeled layers off each other, and under all the differences, we found humanity. Real humanity. The kind that ignores background and simply sees pain, humor, dreams, and exhaustion. Over time, she became one of the safest people in my life, which still feels unbelievable to say. And Daniel? He's just an angel. I stared at the ceiling again, 30 years old. People think healing arrives dramatically, like some movie scene where suddenly everything becomes clear and pain disappears forever. That's not how it works. Healing is quieter. It's sitting alone after your birthday and realizing nobody screamed at you all week. It's noticing your body isn't tense around your friends. It's understanding that people can know your worst parts and still choose you. And somehow that realization dragged me backward into memory, back into the house where fear raised me. My childhood home was never peaceful, ever. There are people who remember their childhood through colors or smells or holidays. I remember mine through tension, the sound of keys at the front door, footsteps, the volume of cabinets closing, the speed of breathing. I became an expert at detecting anger before words were spoken. Children from abusive homes develop that skill like survival instinct. We learn to study facial expressions the way soldiers study maps. My father believed violence solved everything. Bad grade, beating, too loud, beating, too quiet. Something must be wrong. Beating. Forgot something? Beating. Cried. Another beating because crying was dramatic. And afterward came the emotional abuse, sometimes worse than the hits themselves. Worthless. Soft. Embarrassing. What's wrong with you? You ruin everything. It became background noise eventually. My mother wasn't much different. Sometimes she hit me too. Sometimes she simply watched. Sometimes she defended him only to explode at me later herself. Their love was conditional, temporary, dangerous. I learned early that safety didn't exist. And the terrifying thing about children is how adaptable they are. You don't question your reality when you're young. You absorb it. So I absorbed fear. I became terrified of everyone. Teachers, neighbors, friends, cashiers, relatives. Every human interaction felt dangerous because my brain genuinely believed mistakes led to violence. I couldn't relax around people because my nervous system never learned what safety looked like. And slowly I built coping mechanisms. The first one was perfection. If mistakes caused pain, then perfection became survival. So I obsessed over everything. Grades, behavior, cleaning, speaking correctly, walking correctly, existing correctly. Anything less than perfect felt life-threatening. And perfectionism destroys you quietly because eventually nothing is ever enough. I remember being 10 years old and getting a score of 96 on a test. I was proud walking home. Proud. I thought maybe this time they'd smile. My father stared at the paper for maybe 3 seconds before asking where the missing 4 points went. That was it. That was the entire conversation. Another time I accidentally dropped a glass cup in the kitchen. It shattered across the floor, and I froze instantly because I already knew what was coming. My mother screamed like I had committed a crime. My father hit me before I could even apologize. I remember kneeling on the floor afterward, picking glass pieces with shaking hands while trying not to cry too loudly because crying annoyed them more. Children aren't supposed to live like that, but I thought everyone did. The second coping mechanism became people-pleasing, because if perfection failed, maybe usefulness would protect me, so I became helpful. Too helpful. I said yes to everything. Need help moving apartments? Yes. Need someone to stay awake all night listening to your problems? Yes. Need notes, money, favors, time, emotional support? Yes, yes, yes. Because somewhere deep inside me lived a terrified child convinced that appreciation was the closest thing to love he would ever receive. And if people appreciated me, maybe they wouldn't hurt me. The problem is that when your self-worth depends entirely on pleasing others, you stop existing as your own person. You become whatever keeps people happy. I didn't know what I liked, didn't know what I wanted, didn't know who I was outside survival. I only knew how to perform usefulness. Meanwhile, the abuse continued for years. One memory still lives inside me vividly. My father came home furious from work one evening. I didn't know why. I didn't ask. Kids like me learn not to ask. I was maybe 13, walking through the hallway carrying laundry. He walked past me, stopped suddenly, turned around, and hit me hard enough that I fell against the wall. Not because I did something, not because I spoke, not because I disrespected him. I was simply there, in front of him, at the wrong moment. That's the kind of thing abuse does to a child. It teaches you the world is random and dangerous. Your brain stops believing safety can exist consistently. So even now, years later, sudden loud voices make my chest tighten. Even now, when someone sounds slightly annoyed, part of me prepares for attack. Even now, I apologize automatically for things that aren't my fault. Trauma stays in the body long after the events end. Still, despite everything, I succeeded academically. Of course I did. Fear is an incredible motivator. I became the best student because failure felt deadly. Teachers praised me constantly. Relatives talked about my future like I was some success story, and nobody noticed I was collapsing internally. Or maybe they noticed and simply didn't care. When university became possible, I thought maybe my parents would finally be proud. Instead, they treated it like inconvenience. No celebration, no support, no excitement. Just complaints about money and responsibilities and how difficult I made their lives. So I worked. 3 jobs, no days off, morning shifts, night shifts, weekends, exhaustion. I studied between work breaks and slept maybe 4 hours a night sometimes, and somehow I still made it into university. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I just felt tired. Because when you spend your entire life surviving, achievement stops feeling rewarding. It simply becomes the next thing you must endure. University broke me slowly, not because of studying, because by then the years of perfectionism, anxiety, overworking, and emotional suppression had finally started collecting interest. Burnout doesn't happen all at once. It builds quietly. First you lose excitement, then energy, then concentration, and then identity itself. I didn't know how to rest because rest never existed in my childhood. Relaxation felt illegal. Doing nothing made me anxious because productivity was tied directly to worth. So even while exhausted beyond reason, I kept pushing. More work, more studying, more helping everyone else, more pretending I was okay, and the strangest part was that externally I looked intimidating to people. I was tall, quiet, serious, controlled. People assumed confidence. Some were even scared of me, if only they knew. Inside, I was still that terrified child waiting to be hit for existing incorrectly. Sometimes professors asking simple questions made my stomach twist with panic. Group projects exhausted me because I constantly feared disappointing everyone. Relationships became nearly impossible because vulnerability felt unsafe. I remember once during university, a professor criticized part of my presentation publicly. Nothing cruel, completely normal feedback, and I almost had a panic attack afterward. Not because of the criticism itself, because my nervous system interpreted criticism as danger. That's what abuse does. It changes the meaning of ordinary experiences. Love becomes suspicious. Rest becomes guilt. Mistakes become threats. Silence becomes tension. I think the hardest part wasn't even the trauma itself. It was realizing later how much of my personality had been built around surviving it. Who would I have become with loving parents? Would I laugh louder, trust easier, sleep better? Would I stop apologizing for existing? Would relationships feel less terrifying? Would I know how to relax without feeling guilty? Sometimes I mourn that version of myself, the person I never got to become. And honestly, that grief never fully disappears. People love stories about survivors because they want clean endings. They want trauma to become inspirational somehow. But reality is messier. Abuse stole things from me I can never completely recover. Childhood, safety, confidence, identity, years of peace, even happiness sometimes. There are still nights where I feel 14 again emotionally, still moments where I hear my father's voice in my head criticizing everything I do, still times where I panic over tiny mistakes because part of me expects punishment afterward. Healing isn't linear. Sometimes you grow enormously. Sometimes you collapse again. But somewhere along the way, life surprised me. Because despite everything my parents destroyed, people still found me. Friends still found me. Love still found me in different forms. And maybe that's why tonight mattered so much. Those 2 days celebrating my birthday weren't really about turning 30. They were proof that my life belongs to me now, not to fear, not to abuse, not to them, to me. I thought again about Maya laughing so hard she almost spilled her drink yesterday. About Leora forcing everyone onto the dance floor even when half of us complained. About Daniel carrying chairs around the apartment like some exhausted dad trying to organize chaos. Normal moments, beautiful moments, the kind I never thought I'd have. At some point during the party, I stood quietly in the kitchen watching everyone talk over each other loudly, and I realized something painful. This felt more like family than my actual family ever did. Not because everything was perfect, but because nobody was afraid. Nobody was calculating every word carefully. Nobody was waiting for violence. Just people enjoying each other. That realization almost made me cry in the middle of the kitchen. I think younger me would be shocked seeing me now. Not because I became wildly successful or fearless or perfectly healed, but because I survived long enough to find people who treat me gently. Sometimes that's the biggest victory. Outside, a car passed through the empty street below my apartment. I turned slightly in bed and looked toward the dim light coming from the living room. 30 years old. Part of me still hated how unfair life was. Some people begin life loved, protected, encouraged. Meanwhile, others spend decades learning how to undo damage they never deserved. That anger still exists inside me sometimes. And maybe it always will, because abuse changes the shape of a life forever. But at least now, when the memories become too heavy, I'm not alone with them anymore. I have people, real people, Maya, Leora, Daniel. My chest tightened softly at the thought of them. Maybe life ruined me in some ways. Maybe my parents broke parts of me that can never fully heal. But somehow, against all odds, I still found something beautiful afterward. And lying there alone after my 30th birthday, surrounded by silence and leftover celebration, I realized maybe survival itself was something worth being proud of. Even if the child inside me still trembled sometimes. Even if fear still lived in my bones. Even if healing remained unfinished. I survived long enough to be loved. And tonight, for the first time in years, that felt like enough.